What this gray being revealed to me in a lunar crater about death, consciousness, and Jesus' true power will shatter everything you've been taught about heaven, salvation, and what happens to our loved ones when they die. Before this story ends, you'll understand why losing someone you love doesn't mean they're gone, why your prayers for the dead are heard in ways religion never explained, and you'll discover that Jesus' resurrection was demonstrating something far more profound than churches dare to teach. If you're ready to hear truths about the afterlife that have been hidden for 2,000 years, subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell. Because what happened to Michael Harrison on the moon in 1999 changed not just his understanding of death, it revealed humanity's greatest secret about eternal consciousness. Now, let me tell you how it all began.
July 23rd, 1999. Day 3 of my solo lunar mission. I was supposed to be collecting samples from Shackleton crater, but I couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's face, 7 years old, brain tumor, 5 days before launch. "Daddy has to go to the moon," I'd told her in the hospital, "but I'll wave to you from up there." She'd smiled weakly. "Will you bring me a moon rock?" "The biggest one I can carry," I'd promised. 3 hours later, she was gone. NASA offered to postpone the mission. Project Artemis could wait, but I couldn't stay on Earth. Every corner of Houston reminded me of her. The moon seemed like the only place far enough away from the pain. So there I was, 238,900 miles from home, trying to do my job while my heart was shattered into pieces smaller than lunar dust. I'd driven the rover about 2 kilometers from the landing module when I saw it, a metallic glint where there should be nothing but ancient regolith. My first thought was debris from some old probe, but as I got closer, my blood turned to ice. It was a craft, smooth, disc-shaped, about 15 meters in diameter. No visible seams or joints. It hadn't crashed. It was parked, half buried in the crater's shadow like it had been waiting there for centuries. My training kicked in. Report to Houston immediately. Follow protocol. But something made me hesitate. The grief, maybe? The exhaustion? Or perhaps something else? A pull I couldn't explain. I approached the craft. No sound in the vacuum, of course, but I felt vibrations through my boots. Then a section of the hull simply dissolved, like watching solid metal turn to mist. Inside was dimly lit, with a blue-white glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. And standing there, waiting for me, was a being. 4 feet tall, gray skin with a texture like dolphin hide. Those eyes, huge, black, reflecting my helmet lights like dark mirrors. It raised one 3-fingered hand in what felt unmistakably like a greeting. I should have run, should have called Houston, should have done anything except what I did. I stepped inside. The airlock reformed behind me, and suddenly I could hear, not through my radio, but inside my mind, "Michael Harrison, I have been waiting for you." The voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was. "This can't be real," I said aloud, though I knew the being wasn't using ears to hear me. "Reality is far more expansive than you have been taught. Your daughter understood this. She understands it still." At Emma's name, my knees buckled. In lunar gravity, I sank slowly to the floor. Please don't use her memory to..." "I do not use memory, Michael. I speak of present truth. Emma exists. She continues, and she has a message for you."
I need to tell you who I was before that moment, so you'll understand why those words broke me completely. Michael Harrison, 49 years old, astronaut, scientist, atheist. I'd been selected for NASA at 31, Flew 3 shuttle missions, worked on the International Space Station. I was the guy they called when they needed problems solved with logic and precision. Faith was for people who couldn't handle reality. I handled reality for a living. My wife Sarah and I divorced when Emma was 3. The job consumed me. Months of training, years away from home. Sarah remarried a nice guy named David who went to church and coached Little League. Everything I wasn't. But Emma never held it against me. "Daddy goes to space," she'd tell her friends proudly. "He's going to walk on the moon." When she got sick, I threw myself into finding solutions. Best doctors, experimental treatments. I researched brain tumors like I was planning a mission to Mars. There had to be an answer. There's always an answer if you work hard enough, if you're smart enough. Except there wasn't. The tumor was aggressive, inoperable. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. I spent every moment I could with her, reading her stories about astronauts and aliens, teaching her constellations through her hospital window. "Is heaven past the stars, Daddy?" she asked me once. I didn't know what to say. Sarah had been taking her to church with David. They believed in heaven, angels, all of it. But I couldn't lie to my daughter. "I don't know, sweetheart. Nobody really knows what happens after." "Maybe you'll find out on the moon," she said. "Maybe that's closer to heaven." The mission had been my life's work. Project Artemis, a solo lunar expedition to test long-duration equipment for future Mars missions. 3 years of training, hundreds of millions of dollars, the pinnacle of my career. When Emma took a turn for the worse, NASA brass called me in. "We can postpone, Mike. No one would blame you." But Emma had been so excited about the mission. She'd made me promise to go, made me swear I'd bring her that moon rock. How could I break my last promise to her? So, 5 days after I held her hand as she took her last breath, I strapped myself to 4 million pounds of thrust and left Earth behind. I thought the work would help, the distance would help, the silence would help. But grief follows you everywhere, even to the moon. I'd been raised Methodist in small-town Ohio, church every Sunday until I left for MIT. But science became my religion. Facts were my scripture. I believed in what I could measure, test, prove. When Sarah would pray for Emma's healing, I'd be on the phone with researchers in Germany. When the church held prayer vigils, I was reading medical journals. After Emma died, Sarah's faith seemed to comfort her. "She's with God now," she said at the funeral. "She's not suffering anymore." I wanted to scream. If there was a God, why did he create childhood brain tumors? Why did he let a 7-year-old girl suffer and die? The universe was cold, random, indifferent. That was the only truth that made sense.
Standing in that impossible craft with that impossible being, I had a choice. Retreat to the safety of my training, my skepticism, my grief. Or listen. "You speak of my daughter," I said carefully. "If this is some kind of telepathic reading of my memories, your memories are of the past. I speak of now. Emma is more alive than she ever was in her physical form, but you cannot perceive this because you have been taught that consciousness requires a body." The being moved closer. Despite everything, I felt no fear. There was something profoundly gentle about its presence. "Why are you here?" I asked. "To help you, as you are going to help me." "Help you how?" The being gestured to a wall that became transparent. Through it, I could see damage to the craft's exterior, scorch marks, twisted metal. "I miscalculated entry into your moon's gravity well. My propulsion system is damaged. You have the technical knowledge to repair it. But first, there are things you must understand.
about consciousness, about death, about the one you call Jesus. Jesus. The word came out as almost a laugh. I'm having a conversation with an alien on the moon, and you want me to talk about Jesus? Jesus understood what your religions have forgotten. Death is not an ending. It is a transition of consciousness from one state to another. Your daughter knew this. In her final moments, she tried to tell you. My throat closed. Emma's last words echoed in my mind. "I'll wait for you in the light, Daddy." How could you know what she said? Because consciousness is not local, Michael. It is universal. All conscious beings are connected through what you might call a quantum field of awareness. Jesus called it the kingdom of heaven. Your scientists are beginning to discover it. Your daughter now exists within it fully. That's not possible. Consciousness is produced by the brain. When the brain dies, you are a radio engineer as well as an astronaut, yes? If a radio is destroyed, does the radio wave cease to exist? I paused. No, the wave continues. You just can't receive it without the radio. Precisely. The brain is a receiver, not a generator. Consciousness exists independently of physical form. Bodies tune in to consciousness. They do not create it. The being gestured, and suddenly the walls of the craft displayed complex equations. Some I recognized from quantum mechanics, others completely foreign. Will you help me repair my craft, Michael? And in return, I will show you truths that will not only heal your grief, but transform your understanding of existence itself. I thought of Emma, of my promise to bring her a moon rock, of the emptiness that had swallowed me since her death. "Show me," I said.
The being, who called itself Kale, led me to what appeared to be a control room. Seats, clearly not designed for human anatomy, surrounded a holographic display of impossible complexity. "Before we begin repairs," Kale transmitted, "you must understand certain fundamentals that your species has forgotten. Such as, you have been praying wrong your entire life." I almost laughed. "I don't pray. Haven't since I was 15. When you sat beside Emma's bed, begging the universe to save her, what was that if not prayer?" The words hit like a physical blow. That was desperation. All prayer from your species is desperation. You pray from lack, from fear, from separation. You beg an external God to intervene. This is why most prayers appear unanswered. Because there's no one listening? Because you are praying to yourself without knowing it. God is not separate from you, Michael. God is the consciousness that you are, that Emma is, that everything is. When Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," he was revealing the nature of all existence. Kale touched the holographic display and images appeared, energy patterns, geometric forms, flowing light. Jesus of Nazareth was not what your religions teach. He was a consciousness that had evolved through multiple incarnations across different worlds, what you would call an extraterrestrial soul who chose to incarnate on Earth to demonstrate humanity's potential. You're saying Jesus was an alien? I am saying Jesus was a teacher from a civilization that had already discovered what Earth is still learning, that consciousness creates reality, not the other way around.
He came to show you how to use these principles. The miracles? Applications of consciousness technology. When Jesus healed, he was not channeling divine intervention. He was demonstrating how focused consciousness can restructure matter at the quantum level. When he multiplied loaves and fishes, he was showing that matter can be reorganized through intention. When he raised the dead— Wait, raised the dead? Cale's large eyes seemed to look through me. He was demonstrating that consciousness can be called back into a body if the silver cord has not been completely severed. What you call death is often premature abandonment of the physical vehicle due to ignorance of consciousness mechanics. Are you saying Emma could have been— No, Michael. Emma's transition was complete. Her consciousness chose to release its physical form. But she did not cease to exist. She transformed. And she is more accessible to you now than when she was limited by a dying brain. I felt tears in my eyes, absurd in my helmet. I would give anything to believe that. Belief is not required, only understanding. Let me show you how consciousness truly operates.
This is grief-induced psychosis, I said, backing away. The isolation, the stress, losing Emma, I'm having a breakdown. Cale remained perfectly still. If you were hallucinating, would you be able to question your sanity so clearly? Your mind is protecting itself from information that challenges everything you have built your identity upon. My identity is based on facts, on science. Your science is barely scratching the surface of reality. You split the atom before understanding consciousness. You reached your moon before understanding your own minds. Everything you're saying violates the laws of physics, conservation of energy, entropy. The laws you know apply to a 4-dimensional slice of at least an 11-dimensional reality. You are like beings who live on a sheet of paper, denying the possibility of height. Your physics is not wrong, merely incomplete. Cale projected equations that hurt to look at, mathematics that folded in on itself. Your own string theory suggests this. Your quantum mechanics demands it. Consciousness collapse of wave functions requires an observer outside the system being observed. Even if— and I don't believe this, but even if you're real, you could be deceiving me, using my daughter's memory to manipulate me. How do I know you're not evil? Evil seeks to separate, to isolate, to create fear and dependency. I am teaching you connection, unity, empowerment. Would a malevolent force show you how to access your own divine nature? Would it teach you that you need no intermediary between yourself and Source? I'm a NASA astronaut. If I report any of this, my career is over. They'll say I cracked under pressure, went space crazy, everything I've worked for. You worked to explore, to discover, to push boundaries of human knowledge. Is that not what you are doing now? Or does your courage extend only to physical frontiers? That stung, because it was true. Consciousness from the brain. We can measure it. EEGs, fMRIs, we can see thoughts happening. You see the brain's response to consciousness, not consciousness itself. You see the television circuits lighting up, not the broadcast signal. When Emma's brain stopped, you assumed her signal ended, but it simply stopped being received by that particular apparatus. Wave 6. Personal grief. If this is true, if Emma still exists somewhere, why can't I feel her? Why does it hurt so much? Because you are looking for her in the past, in memory. She exists in the present, in a frequency your grief cannot perceive. Pain is not proof of absence, it is resistance to change. Stop. I was on my knees in the low gravity, tears streaming. Just stop.
I held her hand as she died. I watched the light leave her eyes. I felt her go cold. She was terrified. She asked me if it would hurt. I lied and said no. If what you're saying is true, I failed her completely. I should have known. I should have told her she would continue. The death wasn't real. I let my baby girl die in fear because I didn't know. Cale moved closer, and I felt warmth despite the impossibility of it. She was not afraid at the end, Michael. What you saw as fear was her body's reaction. Her consciousness was already expanding beyond it. She saw beings of light waiting for her, what you might call angels, but are actually evolved consciousnesses who assist in transitions. She recognized the truth immediately. Children always do. And her last thought before full separation was of you. What thought? That you would find her in the light, just as she said. She knew you would discover the truth. That is why she wanted you to come to the moon, not to be farther from the pain, but to be closer to understanding.
You require proof, Cale said. Let us begin with knowledge I could not possess through any conventional means. Without touching me, Cale began to recite details of my life with impossible accuracy. The scar on your left kidney from the bicycle accident when you were 7. Your grandmother called you Rocket Boy. You have a recurring dream about floating in a vast library where all the books are written in light. Emma drew you a picture of a purple elephant that you carry in your wallet. You promised your father on his deathbed that you would go farther than any Harrison had gone before. Each detail was perfect, private, impossible for anyone to know. Telepathy? I asked weakly. Consciousness connection. We are all linked in the field. Privacy is an illusion of the ego. Cale gestured to a damaged panel on the craft's wall. The twisted metal began to move, not mechanically, but organically, flowing like liquid while remaining solid. Within seconds, it had returned to its original shape. How? Matter is consciousness, vibrating at a slow frequency. When you understand this, you can adjust the vibration. Jesus did this when he walked on water. He temporarily altered the molecular density through conscious intention. Give me your hand, Cale instructed. I had a deep cut on my palm from handling samples, visible through my suit's glove. Cale held its 3-fingered hand over mine. Warmth spread through the suit's material, impossible but undeniable. When I looked, the cut was gone, not healed, erased, as if it had never existed. Your body remembers its perfect template. Healing is simply reminding matter of its original pattern. Jesus understood this. Your faith has healed you, he would say, because belief changes the quantum field that organizes matter. You wish to know Emma continues. I cannot bring her consciousness here. She has evolved beyond need for physical interaction. But I can show you the continuity of consciousness. Cale touched my helmet, and suddenly I was experiencing memories that weren't mine. I saw Earth from orbit through Cale's eyes, felt its wonder at discovering humanity, experienced its civilization's journey from physical to consciousness-based existence. Then, for just a moment, I felt something else, a presence, familiar, like sunshine and laughter and bedtime stories. Emma. Not words, not images, but unmistakably her. The essence that had nothing to do with her small body or damaged brain. Pure consciousness, free from pain, radiating something that could only be described as joy.
Daddy found the light," came the impression, not heard but felt. "Now you will demonstrate these principles yourself." "I can't." "You flew to the moon. Was that not impossible for your ancestors? You will now do something equally impossible for your current understanding." Cale instructed me to hold a small piece of damaged circuitry from the craft. "Feel its current pattern. Now feel its intended pattern. Hold both in your consciousness. Love is the frequency that allows transformation. Not emotional love, cosmic love, the force that holds atoms together and keeps planets in orbit." I tried to feel what Cale described. To my amazement, I began to sense something like seeing heat shimmer in the desert, the circuit's pattern and its potential. Now invite the pattern to remember itself. I focused, feeling absurd but desperate, and then, impossibly, I felt the metal responding, not to my hands but to my intention. When I opened my eyes, the circuit had repaired itself. This is how Jesus performed miracles. He remembered humanity's true capabilities and demonstrated them. You have just done the same.
Jesus was what you would call a starseed, Cale explained as we worked together to repair the craft's propulsion system. A consciousness that had evolved through experiences in multiple star systems. He volunteered for Earth incarnation as part of what you might call a cosmic assistance program. Why Earth? Your species is at a critical juncture. You have developed enough technology to destroy yourselves, but haven't developed the consciousness to transcend your destructive impulses. Many civilizations face this threshold. Those who pass it join the galactic community. Those who don't, reset and try again. And Jesus came to help us pass? To plant seeds of understanding. His message was simple. You are divine beings capable of everything he demonstrated. You will do greater works than these, he said. He meant it literally. But that's not what churches teach. No. After his transition, those who understood his true teachings were suppressed. The Roman Empire could not control people who knew their own divinity, so they transformed the message. Instead of, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," it became, "The kingdom awaits you after death if you obey." Instead of, "You are one with the Father," it became, "Only Jesus is divine." Instead of, "Your consciousness creates reality," it became, "Submit to reality and await salvation." 2,000 years of lies? Not lies, fear. The religious leaders genuinely believed humanity wasn't ready for such power. They thought they were protecting people, but protection became prison. When Jesus died and returned, he was demonstrating the continuity of consciousness. Physical death is simply consciousness withdrawing from a biological vessel. What you call resurrection is consciousness choosing to re-enter or reconstruct a vessel. But bodies decay. Bodies are patterns of organized energy. Consciousness that fully understands its nature can reorganize energy into any pattern, including a previous body. Jesus maintained enough connection to his physical pattern that he could reconstruct it. This is what he was teaching. Death has no power over consciousness that knows itself. And Emma? Emma's consciousness chose not to return to her damaged vessel. She evolved beyond it. But she has not gone anywhere. Distance is a physical concept. In consciousness, all points are one point. She is as present as your own thoughts. You asked about prayer, Cale continued. True prayer is not petition, but alignment. Watch. Cale demonstrated a technique. First, feel gratitude for what you wish to experience as if it already exists. Gratitude is the frequency of abundance. Then visualize with all senses engaged. Feel the emotions of the fulfilled desire. Hold this state without attachment to how it manifests. This is what Jesus meant by, "Whatever you ask in prayer, believe you have received it and it will be yours." But I prayed for Emma to live. You prayed from fear of loss, not from gratitude for her continuing existence. You prayed for her body to persist, not for her highest good. Sometimes the highest good is transformation rather than preservation. Love, Cale explained, showing me more impossible equations, is not merely emotion. It is the fundamental force that maintains cosmic coherence. What you call the strong nuclear force is love at the subatomic level. What you call gravity is love at the celestial level. What you call compassion is love at the conscious level. Jesus understood this. When he said, "Love your enemies," he was giving practical instruction. Love dissolves the illusion of separation. It literally changes the quantum field between beings. This is why his presence healed. He radiated such pure love frequency that diseased patterns couldn't maintain themselves. Your species is beginning to awaken. The seeds Jesus planted are finally germinating. Within the next decades, critical mass will be reached. Enough humans will remember their true nature that the collective consciousness will shift. What happens then? You join us, not through our arrival, but through your evolution. You become a conscious species, aware of your connection to all life. War becomes impossible when you realize you are attacking yourself. Poverty becomes absurd when you understand abundance is natural. Death loses its sting when you know it's just a doorway.
As Kyle and I worked together to repair the craft, something shifted in me. Not belief, that would come later, but a suspension of disbelief. What if this was real? What if everything I'd been taught about consciousness, death, and divinity was incomplete? The tears came suddenly and wouldn't stop. Not the desperate tears I'd cried for Emma, but tears of relief. If Kyle was right, she wasn't gone. She was transformed, free from pain, still existing, still conscious, still my daughter. As we worked, I began to notice things. The lunar soil wasn't just gray dust. It had patterns, almost like frozen music. The earth, hanging in the black sky, seemed to pulse with life. Billions of consciousness points, creating a web of light visible only when I didn't look directly at it. Try to move this component without touching it, Kyle suggested, indicating a small crystal. Feel its pattern. Invite it to move. I felt ridiculous, but I tried. Nothing. Then I remembered Emma's laugh and felt a burst of love. The crystal trembled. Love is the carrier wave, Kyle reminded me. Intention is the signal. By the third day, I could feel it. Energy flowing through everything. My suit, the lunar soil, even the vacuum itself wasn't empty, but full of potential. When I looked at Earth, I could almost see humanity's collective consciousness like an aurora of thought and emotion. That night, in my habitat module, I tried Kyle's prayer technique. But instead of praying for something, I simply felt gratitude for Emma's continued existence. I held the feeling of her presence, her laugh, her hand in mine. And for a moment, the veil thinned. Not a vision or voice, but a knowing. Emma was there, different, but unmistakably her. The love between us hadn't ended with her body. It existed in what Kyle called the quantum field, eternal, unbreakable. Michael Harrison, astronaut, scientist, atheist. Those labels felt suddenly constraining. I was consciousness having a human experience. The doctorate from MIT, the NASA missions, the technical expertise, tools I'd gathered for this moment of understanding. On the fourth day, as we completed repairs to Kyl's craft, I understood why I'd really come to the moon. Not to run from grief, but to find truth. Emma had known. Somehow, on some level, she had known. "Will I see you again?" I asked Kyle. "You will see us everywhere once you know how to look. We never left. We've been waiting for humanity to develop eyes to see." "You must go back," Kyle said, as the craft powered up. "Share what you've learned. Not everyone will believe, but some will recognize truth. And recognition spreads like light. One candle lighting another until darkness retreats." How do I convince anyone? I'm a scientist who met an alien and found God. They'll think I've lost my mind. Do not try to convince. Simply live what you now know. Others will feel the change in your frequency. They will ask what happened. Tell them the truth, that consciousness is eternal, that love is technology, that Jesus was showing us what we all can become.
The craft's door sealed behind Kale with that same impossible, dissolving, reforming motion I'd witnessed days ago. But this time, I didn't watch him leave. I couldn't. My legs carried me back to the rover on autopilot, my mind still reeling from everything I'd learned, everything I'd become. It was my last night on the moon. Tomorrow, I'd fire the ascent engines and begin the journey home, back to Houston, back to debriefings and psychological evaluations, back to a world that would never understand what had happened in this crater. I should have been running final systems checks, organizing samples, preparing mission reports. Instead, I found myself driving the rover to a ridge about 3 kilometers from the landing module, a place I'd visited on my first day here, before everything changed. The Earth hung in the black sky like a blue-green jewel, exactly where it always was, rotation locked, constant. But I wasn't the same person who'd looked at it 4 days ago. 4 days, that's all it had been. Less than 100 hours since I'd stepped inside that craft, yet I felt like I'd lived 1,000 lifetimes, learned truths that rewrote everything I thought I knew about reality. I parked the rover and simply sat there, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon, even though it never actually rose or set. An illusion of movement created by the rover's position. How many other illusions had I been accepting as truth? The quantum field Kale described, was it visible in the darkness between stars? Was consciousness literally everywhere and I'd been blind to it my entire life? I thought about Emma, about how I'd held her hand as she died, how I'd felt her slip away. But she hadn't slipped away. She'd simply shifted frequency, moved into a spectrum I couldn't perceive. Until now. I closed my eyes inside my helmet and did something I hadn't done since childhood. I prayed. But not the desperate begging prayers from Emma's hospital room. Not the angry accusations I'd hurled at a God I didn't believe in as I watched her suffer. This was different. This was what Kale had taught me. Coherent intention combined with heart-centered gratitude. "Emma," I said aloud, my voice small inside the helmet. "I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know how this works yet. But if consciousness is eternal, if love is the quantum entanglement Kale described, then we're still connected. We were always connected." I felt it immediately. Not a voice, not a vision, but a presence. Like standing in sunshine with your eyes closed, you know it's there, warming you, even though you can't see it. The sensation grew stronger, not just Emma now, but something larger. I remembered Kale's words about Jesus, how he'd mastered the technology of consciousness, how he'd tried to show humanity what we all could become. For the first time in my life, I understood prayer not as asking, but as tuning, like adjusting a radio dial to find a signal that was always broadcasting. My heart was pounding. Inside my suit, sweat beaded on my forehead despite the temperature regulation. This was real. This was actually real,
Not psychological comfort, not grief-induced hallucination, but genuine connection with something beyond physical perception. "Show me," I whispered. "Please, show me what she sees now." What happened next, I still struggle to put into words, even now, years later. The darkness between stars began to shimmer. Not with my eyes saw the same black vacuum they always had, but with something else. Some other sense that suddenly activated like a dormant organ waking up after decades of sleep. I saw frequencies, waves of light that weren't light, patterns of consciousness moving through space like rivers of living information. And Emma, God, Emma, she was there. Not her physical form, but her essence, the unmistakable signature of who she was, who she always would be. She was vast. That 7-year-old girl who loved unicorns and space stories had expanded into something magnificent. She existed in multiple places simultaneously, here with me, somewhere with other beings like her, connected to consciousness throughout the universe. But she was still my daughter, still Emma. The personality, the humor, the gentle soul who'd made me promise to bring her a moon rock, all of it intact, enhanced, liberated from the limitations of a dying body. She felt my communication. Not words, but direct knowing. She showed me for death from her perspective. The tumor hadn't destroyed her consciousness. It had been a doorway, like graduation. Just as Cale had said, she'd stepped through, and on the other side was everything. Connection with all consciousness, understanding of patterns she'd never grasped in physical form, freedom from pain, from limitation, from separation. And she'd been with me, all along. On the shuttle ride up, during my first steps on lunar regolith, in the moment I found Cale's craft, she'd been there, holding that same quantum entanglement Cale described, waiting for me to develop the eyes to see. "Daddy," the knowing came, distinctly Emma, "I'm so proud of you. You found the truth. Now you have to share it." Tears flooded my eyes, floating in zero gravity inside my helmet. "I miss you, sweetheart. I miss your physical presence so much." "I know. I miss my body too sometimes, Daddy, but what I am now, it's so much bigger. And you're going to join me here eventually. Not yet. You have work to do. But when your time comes, you'll see. Death is the lie. Consciousness is forever." I sobbed openly now, months of grief pouring out of me. But it wasn't the desperate, crushing grief that had followed me to the moon. This was grief mixed with joy, loss mixed with understanding. Sadness for the physical separation, but gratitude for the eternal connection. How long I sat there communing with my daughter's consciousness across dimensional boundaries, I don't know. Time felt meaningless, but gradually, the intensity faded. Not because Emma left, I understood now that she never really left, but because maintaining that level of perception required energy I didn't know how to sustain. The shimmer between stars dimmed. The sense of her presence became subtle again, background music rather than overwhelming symphony. But it didn't disappear. I realized it never would. I'd simply learned to hear it. I opened my eyes, my physical eyes, and Earth was still there. The moon was still the moon. But I was different. Fundamentally, permanently different. My radio crackled. Houston running standard check-in. "Artemis, this is Mission Control. Status check. Over." I clicked my transmit button. "Mission Control, Artemis. All systems nominal. Final night operations proceeding normally." Normally. The word felt absurd. Nothing about this mission was normal. Nothing about my existence would ever be normal again. "Copy that, Artemis. You sound good up there, Mike. Ready to come home?" Was I? Home to a world that believed consciousness died with the body? Home to a species still learning the technology Jesus tried to teach 2,000 years ago? Home to scientific communities that would dismiss what I'd learned? Religious institutions that would call it heresy? "Yeah, Houston, I'm ready. But home is going to look a lot different now." The controller chuckled, not understanding. "Roger that. We've all changed a bit since you left. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow." I signed off and sat there a while longer watching Earth. Somewhere down there, Sarah was probably praying for Emma's soul. David was probably teaching their kids the same religious frameworks that had kept humanity blind for millennia. Billions of people convinced that death is the end, that consciousness requires flesh and bone, that they're separate from the divine. And I was going back with a message that would sound insane to most of them. An astronaut who met an alien and found God. A scientist who discovered that consciousness is eternal and Jesus was teaching technology, not theology. But some would listen. Dr. Chen would listen. Others who'd felt the presence of lost loved ones, who'd sensed there was more to reality than materialism could explain, they'd recognize truth when they heard it. I thought about Cale, probably light years away by now, continuing his mission to seed understanding throughout the galaxy. How many other species had he visited? How many other consciousnesses had he helped awaken? And Jesus? Was he part of that same mission? Had he come to Earth as Cale came to me, trying to show us what we all could become? The resurrection suddenly made perfect sense. Not supernatural magic, but consciousness technology, demonstrating that death is an illusion, that what we are cannot be destroyed. "Thank you," I said aloud to the universe, to Emma, to Cale, to whatever consciousness permeated existence. "Thank you for showing me. I'll do my best to share it, even if they think I'm crazy." A meteor streaked across the sky. Coincidence? Or Emma saying she'd heard me? I chose to believe the latter. As I drove the rover back to the landing module, I felt different. Lighter, not because lunar gravity was 1/6 of Earth's. I'd been in that gravity for days.
Lighter because I'd shed the weight of grief, the burden of believing Emma was gone, the crushing loneliness of thinking consciousness was isolated in separate bodies. Tomorrow I'd go home, but I was already changed, already transformed, already beginning the mission that would define the rest of my life, helping others see what I'd seen, feel what I'd felt, understand what I now knew with absolute certainty. Death is the great lie. Consciousness is eternal. Love is quantum entanglement, and Jesus was showing us what we all could become. Inside the Habitat module, I prepared for sleep. But before closing my eyes, I held the moon rock I'd selected for Emma's grave. A small piece of anorthosite, white and pristine, formed billions of years ago when the moon was young. I kept my promise, sweetheart. The biggest moon rock I could carry. But it's more than a rock now. It's a symbol. Physical matter created by the same consciousness that creates everything. I'll put it on your grave, but I know you're not there. You're here. You're everywhere. You're eternal. Sleep came easily that night, for the first time since Emma died. And in my dreams, I flew through quantum fields of consciousness, hand in hand with my daughter, both of us learning to navigate dimensions that had always been there, waiting for us to develop eyes to see. I finished my mission, collected my samples, took my photographs, brought back moon rocks, including one I would place on Emma's grave. My promise kept in ways I never imagined. But I brought back something else, understanding. The debriefings were challenging. I reported equipment anomalies to explain the time gaps, mentioned unusual electromagnetic readings around Shackleton Crater. Technically true, while omitting the deeper truth. But NASA psychologists noted changes. You seem different, Mike. More at peace. Most astronauts who lose a child right before a mission come back shattered. You seem transformed. I smiled. The overview effect is powerful. Seeing Earth from that distance, you realize how connected everything is. Also true. Back in Houston, I returned to work, but everything had changed. During a presentation about Mars missions, I found myself talking about consciousness in space exploration. We assume life requires conditions like Earth's, but what if consciousness can exist in forms we haven't imagined? What if intelligence permeates the universe in ways our instruments can't detect? Colleagues noticed the shift. Some worried I'd been affected by the isolation and grief, but others were curious. Dr. Sarah Chen, a quantum physicist, pulled me aside after a lecture. "Mike, your ideas about consciousness and quantum mechanics, they align with experiments we're doing. Consciousness seems to affect particle behavior in ways that shouldn't be possible. Want to collaborate?" I did. Within a year, we'd published papers on consciousness and quantum collapse that pushed boundaries. Controversial, but compelling. The scientific community was split. Some called it pseudoscience, others called it breakthrough. But the real changes were personal. I could feel Emma's presence now. Not constantly, but in moments of stillness. When I held her picture and felt gratitude instead of grief, sometimes I'd feel warmth, like sunshine on my face. Once, her favorite song played on the radio just when I needed to hear it. Coincidence? Maybe. But I chose to see connection. Sarah, my ex-wife, noticed first. "You're different, Michael. The anger is gone. The desperate need to control everything. What happened up there?" I told her. Not about KL. That would come later. But about realizing consciousness continues. That Emma wasn't gone, just transformed. That prayer worked when it came from gratitude rather than desperation. She cried. "I want to believe that." Then believe it. Not because I say so, but because you can feel it. When you think of Emma with love instead of loss, don't you feel her? She nodded, tears streaming. "I sometimes think I'm imagining it." Maybe imagination is how consciousness communicates across dimensions. We began talking regularly. Not romantically, that chapter had closed, but as two parents learning to navigate grief through understanding rather than denial.
6 months after returning from the moon, I found myself standing at Emma's grave on a cold October morning. The white moon rock I'd brought back sat at the base of her headstone, weathered now by Houston rain and summer heat. Emma Marie Harrison, 2092 to 2099. Our little star. I'd come alone, as I did every Sunday morning, not out of obligation or grief anymore, but because this physical place helped me focus the quantum connection Cale had taught me about. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful, a good place to tune into frequencies beyond the physical. I was sitting on the grass, eyes closed, feeling Emma's presence in that way I'd learned on the moon, when I heard footsteps behind me. "I knew I'd find you here." Sarah's voice. I opened my eyes and turned. She looked tired, older than her 43 years. The grief had aged both of us, but where I'd found a strange peace, she still carried the weight visibly. "Hey," I said, standing and brushing grass from my jeans. "Everything okay?" She held up a coffee cup, my favorite order from the shop near NASA. "Thought you might need this, and I need to talk." We sat together on the bench near Emma's grave. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. A mockingbird sang somewhere in the oak trees. Life continuing, indifferent to human sorrow. "David left," Sarah said finally. I turned to her, surprised. "What? When?" 2 weeks ago." She stared at the coffee in her hands. He said I was becoming obsessed, that I'd changed, that the woman he married was disappearing into, he called it New Age nonsense. My stomach tightened. I had an idea where this was going. Sarah, but he's right though. She looked at me and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Certainty. I have changed. Ever since you told me about consciousness continuing, about feeling Emma's presence, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Emma's favorite song lyrics written in what looked like condensed breath on a bathroom mirror. I didn't write that, Michael. I woke up 2 days ago and it was there, in Emma's handwriting, the same way she used to write on fogged-up car windows. The hair on my arm stood up. What did David say? He said it was condensation, coincidence, my subconscious acting out grief. But I know what I saw. And that's not all. She scrolled through her phone. 3 days ago, I was driving past her old school. Her favorite song came on the radio, the one that never plays anymore because it's from 2098. Then my check engine light came on. I pulled over, and when I looked under the hood, there was a white feather sitting on the engine block. Michael, I'd just driven 60 miles per hour on the highway. How does a feather survive that? I knew, of course, but hearing Sarah describe these experiences she'd been taught her whole life to dismiss or explain away, I realized how revolutionary simple truth could be. She's reaching out to you, I said quietly. She always has been. You're just learning to see it now. Sarah's hands trembled. But how? The church said she's in heaven, waiting for resurrection day. David said consciousness dies with the brain. Science says... Science is catching up, I interrupted gently. Dr. Chen and I just published a paper showing that consciousness affects quantum particle behavior in ways that shouldn't be possible if consciousness is just brain activity. The data suggests consciousness is fundamental to reality, not emergent from it. So when you told me about the moon, about realizing Emma continues, you weren't just comforting me, you were telling me scientific truth. I was telling you what I experienced, what I know. I paused, choosing my words carefully. The whole truth was still locked inside me, too explosive to share widely. But Sarah deserved more. Can you keep something confidential? I mean, truly confidential. Not from David, he's gone, but from everyone. Michael, you're scaring me. Don't be scared. Be amazed. I took a breath. I met someone on the moon. Someone not human, and he taught me things about consciousness, about death, about what Jesus was really trying to show us. Things that explain everything. Sarah's eyes went wide. For a moment, I thought she'd laugh, call me crazy, walk away. Instead, she leaned forward. Tell me everything. So I did. Sitting on that bench near Emma's grave, I told Sarah about Kale, about the craft, about learning that consciousness is eternal, that death is transformation, that love is literal quantum entanglement, about Jesus mastering consciousness technology and trying to teach it to humanity, about prayer as frequency tuning rather than begging, about Emma existing now in a form more vast and free than she'd ever been in her body. Sarah cried through most of it, but not tears of grief, tears of recognition. I knew it, she whispered when I finished. I knew there had to be more. The church version never made sense. A God who loves us but tortures people eternally? A heaven where we sit around praising him forever. What kind of existence is that? She wiped her eyes. But this, consciousness continuing, evolving, connecting, that feels true. That feels like something worth existing for.
The hard part is sharing it, I said. People aren't ready. They'll call it crazy, heresy, delusion. Even my colleagues who are open to consciousness research would struggle with the alien contact part. But some people are ready. Sarah looked at Emma's grave, at the moon rock I'd brought back. People who've lost someone and felt their presence. People who've had experiences they can't explain. They're ready for truth, Michael. They're desperate for it. She was right. I'd seen it in the emails I'd been receiving since my subtle shifts in presentations and papers. People reaching out, sharing their own experiences of consciousness beyond death, asking if I believed it was real. What if we started small? Sarah suggested. A support group. For parents who've lost children, but instead of traditional grief counseling, we teach them what you learned. How to feel their children's presence, how to shift from grief to gratitude, how to understand death as transformation. The idea hit me like lightning. A bridge between science and spirituality, between loss and understanding. We could call it, Sarah thought for a moment, the Emma Project, in her honor. I felt tears sting my eyes. She'd love that. We sat in silence, both of us feeling it. Emma's presence, stronger now as if she was celebrating this decision. The mockingbird sang again. Sunlight broke through clouds, warming my face in that familiar way. There's something else, Sarah said softly. Something I need to tell you. Yesterday, I tried the prayer technique you described. Gratitude instead of asking. Feeling Emma's presence instead of mourning her absence. And? I fell asleep on the couch. And Michael, I had the most vivid dream. Emma was there, but older. Maybe 12 or 13. She was showing me colors I've never seen before, playing music that doesn't exist here. She told me, Sarah's voice broke. She told me she's learning, growing, that death was her graduation, not her ending. And she said to tell you that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. The confirmation hit me deeply. Not just my experience anymore. Sarah was developing the sight too, the ability to perceive consciousness beyond physical form. We're going to help so many people, I said. Yes, Sarah agreed. We are. But Michael, you have to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll tell the whole story eventually. Not just the grief support groups, not just the scientific papers. The whole truth about Kale, about what you learned, about Jesus and consciousness technology. The world needs to hear it. I looked at Emma's grave, at the moon rock I'd brought back from 238,900 miles away. A promise kept, but there were other promises still waiting. I will, I said. When the time is right, when enough people are ready to hear it, I'll tell everything. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. She's proud of you. I can feel it. I can too, I said. And in that moment, sitting in a Houston cemetery on an October morning, I felt the quantum field Kale had described. I felt Emma's consciousness, vast and joyful. I felt the connection between all living things, the eternal nature of awareness, the truth that death is humanity's greatest lie. The Emma Project would begin next week. Dr. Chen had already agreed to provide scientific backing. Sarah would bring her organizational skills and first-hand experience, and I would share what I'd learned on the moon. Carefully, gradually, but truthfully. Some would think we were crazy. Some would call it cult-like or dangerous, but others would recognize truth when they heard it. And recognition spreads like light, Kale had said. One candle lighting another until darkness retreats. We stood to leave, but I paused at Emma's headstone one more time. We're doing this for you, sweetheart. And because of you. The white moon rock caught sunlight gleaming like a beacon, like a promise.
like proof that some things can travel across impossible distances and still remain whole. Just like consciousness, just like love, just like Emma.
And now I'm talking to you. Yes, you, watching this video. You've probably lost someone, a parent, a child, a friend, a love. You've prayed desperate prayers that seem to hit heaven's ceiling and fall back unanswered. You've wondered if this is all there is: birth, suffering, death. Nothing. The church has told you to have faith, to believe without evidence, to trust God's plan even when that plan seems cruel. But what if the cruelty isn't the plan? What if the cruelty is the misunderstanding? What if death isn't real in the way you've been taught? What if consciousness, the you that is aware right now, cannot die because it was never born? What if Jesus wasn't trying to create a religion, but to demonstrate technology, consciousness technology that every human possesses? You have more power than you've been taught. The ability to heal, to manifest, to connect with consciousness throughout the universe. It's not supernatural, it's natural. It's your birthright. But religions turned empowerment into dependency. They taught you to beg an external God rather than activate the divine within. They made you fear death instead of understanding transformation. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." He meant it, literally. He said, "You will do greater works than these." He wasn't being modest. He said, "I and the Father are one." He was revealing what's true for all of us. Your loved ones who have transitioned, they're not in some distant heaven waiting for Judgment Day. They're here, now, in a frequency your physical senses can't perceive, but your consciousness can feel. Try this. Instead of grieving what you've lost, feel gratitude for what continues. Instead of praying for their souls, feel their presence. Instead of fearing death, understand it as graduation. Watch what happens. You might feel warmth. You might receive signs. You might suddenly know things you have no way of knowing. You might discover that the separation you feel is an illusion maintained by false belief. Leave a comment below. Tell me about your experiences. Have you felt presence of someone who died? Have you received signs that consciousness continues? Have you ever known something was true despite everything you were taught? You're not crazy. You're awakening. Subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell, because more people are having these experiences, more truths are being revealed, and the greatest discovery isn't out there in space, it's within you. Remember, you are not a body that has a soul. You are an eternal consciousness having a temporary physical experience. Your loved ones haven't gone anywhere. They've simply changed frequency. And when you change your frequency from grief to gratitude, from fear to love, from separation to connection, you'll find them waiting in the light, just as they promised, just as Emma promised me, just as she kept that promise on the moon.